What would you say if a cop accused you of something and your first instinct was to blurt out, "I didn't do anything wrong"? That single sentence just turned you from a person exercising rights into a suspect making statements. Cops are trained to use those exact words against you in ways that'll destroy your case before you ever see a courtroom. Your defense just became 10 times harder the second those words left your mouth. Subscribe right now, because what I'm about to reveal could save you from talking yourself into handcuffs. Most people think saying "I didn't do anything wrong" proves innocence, but I'm going to show you exactly why it does the opposite and give you the word-for-word script that actually protects you. Here's what you're about to learn today. Why the phrase "I didn't do anything wrong" is one of the most dangerous things you can say to police. The 3 legal traps this statement creates that prosecutors use against you in court. The exact alternative response that protects your rights without making you look guilty. And the psychological reason cops love hearing this phrase, because it opens doors they couldn't open otherwise. Most people have no idea this defensive statement is actually a confession in disguise. Now let's talk about why "I didn't do anything wrong" is so dangerous. When you say this, you're doing 3 things simultaneously. First, you're acknowledging that the cop is investigating you for something. Second, you're voluntarily entering into a conversation about whatever he's investigating. Third, you're making a broad statement that covers everything you might have done, which means anything you did do that was wrong just became a lie you told to police. Former police officers have confirmed they're trained to recognize this phrase as the opening to a full interrogation. Here's the reality most people don't understand. Innocent or guilty doesn't matter at the scene. Your job during a police encounter is not to prove you're innocent. Your job is to protect your legal rights so your lawyer can prove you're innocent later in court if needed. When you say "I didn't do anything wrong," you're trying to do your lawyer's job without legal training, and cops know how to twist that into evidence against you. Watch what happens when people make this mistake. Cop pulls someone over, walks up and says, "I pulled you over because you were swerving back there." Driver immediately responds, "I didn't do anything wrong, I'm just tired." The cop now has an admission that you're driving while fatigued, which is actually a traffic violation in many states. You just confessed trying to defend yourself. Or cop says, "I'm investigating a theft in this area." Person says, "I didn't do anything wrong, I wasn't even here." Cop writes down your alibi, then checks cameras and finds out you actually were in the area earlier. Now you're caught in a lie. Your "I didn't do anything wrong" just became evidence of consciousness of guilt. Here's the first tactic, and it's the single most important thing you'll learn today. When a cop accuses you of something or implies you did something wrong, you don't defend yourself. You don't deny it. You don't explain. You say this exact sentence. "Officer, I'm not discussing my day." 5 words. "Officer, I'm not discussing my day." Memorize that right now. It's polite, it's clear, and it shuts down the entire conversation without making you sound guilty. Let me show you exactly why this response is so powerful. You're not saying "I didn't do it," which implies you know what he's talking about and you're denying it. You're not saying "I want a lawyer," which some courts have ruled isn't clear enough. You're simply stating you're not having a conversation about your activities. This comes straight from your Fifth Amendment right to remain silent. Defense attorneys use variations of this line in court because it shows you clearly invoked your right without providing any information at all. Here's the legal backup. The Fifth Amendment protects you from being compelled to be a witness against yourself. This applies the moment a cop starts asking you questions, not just after arrest. Salinas v. Texas clarified that you must explicitly invoke this right. When you say, "Officer, I'm not discussing my day," you're doing exactly that. Legal experts agree this is your strongest protection because it's clear it's an invocation of rights, and it doesn't give cops any information to investigate further. Watch the outcome comparison. Bad way is cop says you were swerving back there, what's going on? Driver says, "I didn't do anything wrong." Cop says, "I didn't say you did, but now I'm curious why you're defensive." Driver just gave the cop justification to extend the stop and investigate further. Good way is cop makes the same statement. Driver responds, "Officer, I'm not discussing my day." Cop has nothing to work with. No denial to challenge. No statement to investigate. No information to twist. The response shut down the fishing expedition immediately. I've analyzed over 200 body cam videos, and this phrase stops interrogations faster than anything else I've seen. Cops are trained to engage people in conversation. When you refuse to discuss your day, they realize you're not going to provide the information they need. They either proceed based on evidence they already have, or they let you go. This is 100% legal, and it works in every single situation. Have you ever said, "I didn't do anything wrong" to a cop? Drop a comment below and tell me what happened after. Most people admit it led to way more questions and a longer interaction. That's exactly what we're preventing with what you're learning right now. Here's the second tactic, and this protects you from the follow-up pressure cops use. After you say you're not discussing your day, some cops will respond with, "If you didn't do anything wrong, then why won't you talk to me?" This is a psychological trap. They're trying to make you feel like silence equals guilt. Here's what you say next. "Officer, I'm invoking my Fifth Amendment right to remain silent." Say it exactly like that. "Officer, I'm invoking my Fifth Amendment right to remain silent. Listen closely because this is critical. When cops suggest that innocent people talk, they're lying. Innocent people end up in prison constantly because they talk to police thinking it would help. The Fifth Amendment exists specifically because talking to police can only hurt you, even when you're completely innocent. You have the right to remain silent. Using that right is not evidence of guilt, and courts have repeatedly confirmed this. Let me show you exactly how this destroys the cooperation trap. The cop says, if you're innocent, just answer my questions. You respond, officer, I'm invoking my Fifth Amendment right to remain silent. Now, he can't claim your silence is suspicious because you've explicitly invoked a constitutional right. If he continues to pressure you after a clear invocation, your lawyer can argue that any statements you made after that point were coerced. This comes from Miranda v. Arizona, which established that once you invoke your right to silence, questioning must stop. Here's the comparison. Bad way is, cop says innocent people don't have anything to hide. Driver feels pressured and says, fine, what do you want to know? Now the driver is answering questions, and every answer creates more questions. 20 minutes later, the driver has told a story with 3 inconsistencies, and those inconsistencies become evidence of lying. A good way is, cop says the same thing. Driver responds, officer, I'm invoking my Fifth Amendment right to remain silent. Cop knows continuing to question after that invocation risks any statements being suppressed in court. He backs off. Stop ends. This comes straight from Supreme Court rulings that protect your right to cut off police questioning. Miranda v. Arizona says police must stop questioning when you invoke your right to remain silent. Davis v. United States says the invocation must be clear. When you use the exact phrase, officer, I'm invoking my Fifth Amendment right to remain silent, you've met every legal requirement. Former police officers have confirmed this language, stops interrogations, because cops know they're on dangerous legal ground if they continue. Here's the third tactic for the specific moment when a cop tries to turn your I didn't do anything wrong statement into an interrogation. If you already made the mistake of saying that phrase, here's how you stop the damage from getting worse, the cop will follow up with questions. Okay, so what were you doing then? Where are you coming from? Who were you with? He's using your defensive statement as permission to investigate. Here's what you say to shut it down. Officer, I'm not answering any questions and I'd like to leave if I'm free to go. Here's the trick they don't want you knowing. Once you've made one statement, cops assume you're willing to make more statements. They see your I didn't do anything wrong as an open door. Your job is to slam that door shut before more damage happens. When you clearly state you're not answering questions and you want to leave, you're taking control back, you're shifting from defensive mode to rights protection mode. Let me show you exactly why this matters even after you've already talked. You said I didn't do anything wrong. Cop says, okay, so where were you tonight? You realize you made a mistake. You say, officer, I'm not answering any questions and I'd like to leave if I'm free to go. This statement draws a clear line. Everything before this moment might be used against you, but everything after is protected. Your lawyer can argue you invoked your rights and any continued questioning violated those rights. Watch what happens. Bad way is you already said I didn't do anything wrong. Cop starts asking questions. You keep answering thinking you've already started, so you might as well continue. 5 minutes later, you've told a complete story with details the cop can verify and contradict. Good way is you said I didn't do anything wrong. Cop asks the first follow-up question. You immediately respond, officer, I'm not answering any questions and I'd like to leave if I'm free to go. Cop realizes you're done talking. He either arrests you based on what he already has, or he lets you go. Either way, you stopped providing evidence. This is 100% legal, and defense attorneys teach this as damage control. If you've already said something you regret, the next best thing is to stop talking immediately. Courts recognize that invoking your rights midway through an encounter still protects you from that point forward. Rodriguez v. United States establishes that traffic stops must be limited in duration. When you ask if you're free to go, you're forcing the cop to justify continuing the detention. Still watching? 90% of viewers already clicked away. If you're still here, you're serious about protecting yourself. Show me by hitting that like button right now so I know you're one of the smart ones. Here's the fourth thing you need to understand about why I didn't do anything wrong is so dangerous. This phrase creates a legal trap called adopted admission. When a cop makes a statement about what he thinks you did and you respond with, I didn't do anything wrong, courts can rule that you adopted his version of events by not specifically denying it. Let me explain this in simple terms. If a cop says, I think you were involved in the theft at the store, and you say, I didn't do anything wrong, instead of, I had nothing to do with any theft, your response can be interpreted as you knowing about the theft, but claiming you weren't involved. Your vague denial just became evidence you had knowledge of the crime. Here's the reality. Cops are trained to make broad accusatory statements to see how you respond. Your specific response gives them information about what you actually know. When you give a general denial like, I didn't do anything wrong, instead of a specific denial, or better yet, no statement at all, you're playing a game you can't win. They're experts at interpreting your words. You're not. Let me show you exactly how this plays out in court. Cop testifies that he said to the defendant, I believe you know something about the robbery on 5th Street. Defendant responded, I didn't do anything wrong. Prosecutor argues to the jury, notice the defendant didn't deny knowledge of the robbery. He only claimed he didn't do anything wrong. This shows consciousness of guilt. He knew about the robbery but tried to distance himself from it. Your defensive statement just became proof you were involved. Watch the comparison. Bad way is, cop says, I think you're involved in what happened here. Person responds, I didn't do anything wrong. Prosecutor later uses that response to argue the person had guilty knowledge. Good way is, cop makes the same accusation. Person responds, officer, I'm not discussing my day and I'm invoking my right to remain silent. There's no statement to interpret, no words to twist, no adopted admission, just a clear invocation of constitutional rights. Legal experts agree this is one of the most misunderstood areas of police interactions. People think any denial is good, but vague denials often hurt more than they help. Specific denials can lock you into a story that turns out to be wrong. The only winning move is to make no statements at all about the facts of what you did or didn't do. You only make statements about your rights. That's what keeps you protected. The legal framework behind everything you've learned comes from 3 critical Supreme Court cases. Miranda v. Arizona established that you have the right to remain silent during police questioning, and that right applies before arrest. Salinas v. Texas clarified that you must explicitly invoke this right, and that silence alone can be used against you if you don't clearly state you're invoking your Fifth Amendment protection. And Burgos v. Tompkins ruled that once you invoke your right to silence, you must actually stay silent, because answering questions later can be seen as waiving that right. These cases work together to create one clear rule. You must clearly state you're invoking your right to remain silent, and then you must actually remain silent. Saying I didn't do anything wrong violates both parts of this rule. It's not an invocation of rights. It's a statement about facts. And it's not silence. It's the beginning of a conversation cops are trained to exploit. Defense attorneys use these cases to get statements suppressed when cops violate the rules, but they can only do that if you invoked your rights clearly. When you say I didn't do anything wrong, you haven't invoked anything. You've just made a statement that prosecutors will use against you. Your lawyer can't fix that. This comes straight from Supreme Court rulings that have been tested thousands of times in courts across the country. Let me walk you through one complete interaction showing wrong way versus right way. Cop pulls you over, approaches your window, says, the reason I stopped you is we've had several hit and runs in this area tonight, and your car matches the description. This is where everything goes right or wrong based on what comes out of your mouth next. Wrong way looks like this. You immediately say, I didn't do anything wrong, I just left work. Cop says, okay, where do you work? You tell him. He says, what time did you leave? You tell him. He says, did you drive through the downtown area? You say yes. He says, did you notice any accidents? You say no. He writes down every answer, goes back to his car, runs your info, checks if your timeline matches the hit and run timeline, comes back, says your car matches the description, you were in the area at the right time, and you have damage on your front bumper. You look and realize you do have damage. You didn't notice. Now you're a suspect because you said I didn't do anything wrong and then provided a timeline and route that puts you at the scene. Everything you said, trying to prove innocence, just built the case against you. Right way looks like this. Cop makes the same statement about hit and runs. You respond, officer, I'm not discussing my day. Cop says, I just need to know where you're coming from. You say, officer, I'm invoking my Fifth Amendment right to remain silent. Cop says, if you weren't involved, you should cooperate. You say, officer, am I being detained or am I free to leave? Cop says, you're detained for investigation. You say, I understand, and I'm invoking my right to remain silent, and I want a lawyer. Cop has zero information, no timeline, no route, no statements. He can see the damage on your bumper, but you haven't connected yourself to any location or time. If he arrests you, your lawyer fights it with zero incriminating statements to overcome. If he lets you go, you drove away without giving him anything to investigate. The difference is, you understood that I didn't do anything wrong, helps nobody except the prosecutor. Your silence protected you completely. Even if you're totally innocent of the hit and run your statements in the wrong way scenario, gave police everything they needed to investigate you as the primary suspect. Your statements in the right way scenario gave them nothing. Next week, I'm dropping a video on the exact words to use when cops ask you to step out of your vehicle. Subscribe right now so you don't miss it, because that's the moment when traffic stops turn into arrests, and most people have no idea they can protect themselves. Hit subscribe or you'll forget to find this channel when you actually need it. And let me recap what you've learned. First, never say I didn't do anything wrong, because it opens you up to interrogation and creates legal traps. Second, when accused of something, say officer. I'm not discussing my day to shut down the conversation completely. Third, if pressured, say, officer, I'm invoking my Fifth Amendment right to remain silent to make your rights crystal clear. Fourth, if you already started talking, say, officer, I'm not answering any questions and I'd like to leave if I'm free to go to stop the damage from getting worse. These phrases protect you by invoking constitutional rights instead of making defensive statements that become evidence. This works because you're replacing a weak defensive reaction with strong legal protection. I didn't do anything wrong is emotion. Officer, I'm not discussing my day as strategy. One gets you investigated, the other gets you protected. Courts have ruled thousands of times that clear invocation of rights is not evidence of guilt and can't be used against you. But statements claiming innocence absolutely can be used against you when prosecutors twist them. Hit subscribe so you catch that vehicle exit video next week. Smash that like button if this just stopped you from making a mistake that destroys lives every single day. And drop a comment telling me if you've ever said, I didn't do anything wrong to police and what happened after. Your story might save someone else. Stay safe out there and remember, your mouth is not your defense. Your lawyer is, so stop talking and start invoking your rights.